Hello and g'day! Today's video is an address booklet. It's a smallish little vintage style booklet. We've got some lined printed name, street, city, telephone, all that sort of stuff for your addresses, and it's also got memorandum for writing notes. I've done it in a few different covers for you to show you how versatile this is. Now I've got the pattern here. It's available on my website. The description is below. When you get your pattern, you get these pieces here. So it's a PDF in 3 sheets. I suggest you print the first one out just in normal white paper, and then the second sheet is sheet B and sheet C, which is double-sided. You need to print that on the pages you want to use in your book, and I'll explain that throughout the video rather than right now. But this one here, I've used just a lightweight parchment paper. Once you've worked out what you want to use for your cover, that would dictate what sort of paper that you want to use. So if you haven't got any parchment, look, I'll go back to the cover first so it's not confusing you. On the first sheet, it's got your cover pattern. So you print this out on just normal copy paper or on a heavyweight cardboard so you can make your pattern. Once you've got your little pattern, you can use that for all of the styles of book, no matter what sort of card that you're going to use to make your cover. Now you decide what you want to make your cover out of. This one here, I've used a piece of designer paper, the 12 by 12 sheets. Right, this one here, I've used a page out of a book. The page is quite, it is a heavy paper, right? This is a light paper. See how it's quite light. This is much heavier. You want a heavy paper. Don't use this light one for the cover. It would be too light. You could, but it would be much better. You'll see it if you make one yourself. You'll see what I mean. The Edith Holden paper, if you've got any Edith Holden books, you'll know what I mean by it's got a bit of weight to it. These papers are perfect for the cover. You don't want anything heavy because it's ephemera. You want to be able to put these in your journals. If it's too heavy, it'll be too heavy. It'll be too bulky. It's only meant to be a tiny little book. It can be used. You could put this in your purse and you could use it. But they're great for your junk journals. Right. Here's another good suggestion for the covers. These here are just squares that I found in my mum's stash. I pulled them out, and even though they don't quite fit, they're a little bit longer and not as wide, I still was able to use them. So instead of printing out the printables to make my address pages, I just used plain paper. So they're pretty versatile if you've got some pretty little squares that you want to use up. So there's another cover idea. This cover idea I loved. It's perfect. You've got these, oh gosh, what are these called? You figure out the width that you need it. You can use it with the corner, or you can come back to there and you use your pattern to cut that out, and they make beautiful covers as well, and the weight of that is really good too. So there's another idea for making the covers, is to use these cards, and they have some beautiful designs that are perfect to make these vintage covers for these books. Another thing is that I've got these available in 2 colours. You can print them out in a blue or in a black. You can see the blue looks really good with this pattern on this card, and I've put the black in this one. And that is the inside of the other side of the page of the book. So it works perfectly. Now some paper ideas for the pages. You can use a parchment. This is the 89 GSM and this one is 100 GSM. Believe it or not, there's a big difference between the two. It could be the brands, but I liked the lighter one, but they are two different colours. I like the colour of that one. Personal preference. This one is a coloured copy paper and this one is 80 GSM and it is better again. It's really nice and yellow. It's got a lovely colour and it's a beautiful weight. It printed up really nice and it's not too heavy. So you've got that one. And this one here is a different colour again. It could be just a normal copy paper. It could be about 90 GSM. So that is suitable as well. And of course, your normal everyday white copy paper. So if you haven't got any coloured paper, you're not stuck. You don't have to use it. You can use white. You can use white with the black print or white with the blue print. It looks really good. So I'll just clear all this stuff I've got off to my side here and we'll get stuck in and make a few. Now for the cover, I've used my recycled manila folders. I love this cardstock. It is just such a super weight. And I have been advised by one of our group members what the weight of this is, so I'll just put it on here for you. It's called Buff Manila cardstock and it's a GSM something. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but I'll put it here for you now. That's one option. So once you've got your pattern piece cut out, if you're using the manila folder, so I'll use this for my demo, just if it's square, just put it in the corner. If it's not, just trace around it and then cut that out. Now you can mark your fold line off that, or you can cut it out and then come back and we'll match it up with that. So we'll cut this out first. It's pretty easy to cut the cover. And I always rub off my pencil marks. You can freehand fold it and then just crease it with your bone folder, but I'm going to use the scoreboard. Now to get your centre point, you can bring this back over to here and just sit it on there and mark that there. This is 4 1/4 inches and that should fall on the 2 1/8 mark there, just to make sure, and just score it down there. And when you fold it over, you make sure these sides are square before you go and commit and crease that down. You can just crease it there. If you're a little bit out, you can just trim that back to make those two edges the same. You won't miss that tiny bit I just cut off. So that's your cover made. I'll show you now how to cut out the pages. Now for cutting out this in the double-sided, so I've printed out side B and then side C, which is the opposite side. I'm only going to use the box that is related to side B. Don't have to worry about anything there. As long as you've put this in your printer nice and straight, it should line up with the other side. You need to take care that your print is going to print with the address heading there and the same on that side. The address heading has to match on this side. So when you put it in your printer, be careful to flip it over so that it's facing the same way when it prints. Otherwise you might have, your print upside down and you won't be happy. You'll have to print it again. I've made my cover. I've cut that out of that big vintage sheet and it turned out really, really nice, just cutting out that corner of the 12 by 12 sheet. All I do is I'm going to cut around the dark lines. Forget about the little targets. All they are is to show you that that's our trimming area. So our square line is bigger than we need our booklet pages to be. So just put your ruler on your cutting line, which is the very outer line, and cut that away. Come back into the next one and cut that away. Next one, cut that away, and so on until you're all the way down through those 4 sides. Now I'm just going to turn them around and I'm going to start cutting on the bottom of that line, and then I'll go to the next line here, cut that, next line, cut that, and the next line on the top, and cut that. So that's those 2 pages done. And I'll repeat it on this side. When I fold my papers over, I have this address side of the paper facing me. Then I just fold it over and crease it. You don't need to score your paper. And just go through. You can fold them all together if you like, and just put them inside each other. I only put 4 sheets in because there's 5 addresses on that row and 5 on that row. So that's quite a lot of addresses when you're using just a little mini book like this. Now you see how the pages creep out? And that's another reason why we make the pages a little bit bigger than they need to be. So when I put that inside here, see how it's just a little bit bigger than the cover? And that gives us that wiggle room to trim them back and make them nice and even. So I'll start by making it top and bottom. Don't worry about that just yet, just top and bottom. And I'll trim a tiny little bit off the bottom. You don't need to trim very much at all, just a little bit. And all that does is make the bottom pages even. I'm holding it quite tight so nothing moves. I'm going to come back around and I'm going to even up the top of the pages, and that's a tiny bit. And I'm holding my pages tight and I'm going to fit them back in. Now you see how it fits inside that cover reasonably tight. There's not much of the cover hanging over. If you want more, cut off more. Get your pencil once it's in there and just put a pencil mark at the edge of your cover. Very carefully, not moving any of these pages. Move your cover aside, not moving the pages again, and put that down. Put your ruler very close to your marked pencil line and shimmy it to the left a little bit. So I'm going to cut back a little way from where I put my pencil line because I don't want these pages peeking through that cover. So I'm going to cut all them off now, a few passes, so that I'm not trying to cut through the whole lot in one go. And see how that's now nice and neat on all 3 sides? And I'll do another fit in there. See that? It's pretty close to the edge of the cover. Now that's ready to sew in. I'll just find the center, straighten it up, The most important thing is that it is level and that it's tucked right into that fold line there. Put that on there and then just take it over to the sewing machine and sew it straight down that center line. If you haven't got a sewing machine, just use a stapler. Just get your stapler in there. You can either staple it that way and have the folds of the stapler on the outside, or you can staple it that way, which I'd prefer to do, and have the full side of the stapler showing there with the folds of the stapler on the inside. So you can either sew or staple. I'll just go and sew that in and I'll be back in a minute. Now I've got that all sewn in. Don't need to hold that anymore. Just sewn straight down the center of that fold line and it shows up on the back side. You just need to trim up your threads and give it a press. Okay, that's it. That's how easy it is to make this little booklet. We'll give it a bit of colour because I think that would look really good. Because this is for a man's junk journal. We seem to forget the men, or not so much forget, it seems to be harder to find things that work for a man. So we've got the black print with the parchment paper, but I'm pretty happy with the way that looks, and that would look really, really good in a man's journal. Now I'll show you what to do if you haven't got a printer and you can't print out your little note sheets like this one. I've just grabbed a notepad. Just got your lined papers, and they're good because they've got a very lightweight paper. You just pull out a sheet, or let one fall out like that one just did, fold it in half, and I know that that one's too big that way and too big that way. I'm just going to do a rough cut here. I'm going to cut that off there. Get about 4 to 5 sheets of this, put them inside each other like that, trim them back to fit inside like that, and then get your rubber stamps and just stamp notes or addresses and the same on there, and decorate your cover. I've left that blank to show you that you can do whatever you want with a blank cover. Right, now we're ready to sew in the pages. I've put the holes in already. I've put one in the middle and one at the top and one at the bottom. I used a pokey tool, but you can actually use your sewing needle. You don't have to put the holes in with the pokey tool. I'm using a upholstery thread. I grabbed this from Spotlight, and a bookbinder's needle. Push your needle through the middle hole from the inside of the book and just grab the tail of the thread here so it's coming out on the other side, and then come in this hole here on the outside of the book and push it back through to the inside of the book. Now pull that nice and snug, not too tight, and make sure you've still got your tail here. Miss the middle hole and go all the way back down to the bottom. Put the needle through the bottom hole and come back out to the outside of the book. Keep that tail, that last bit of thread, out of the way. Pull it snug, not over tight. Right, now on the outside of the book, turn it back over and bring your needle back through the middle hole to the inside and pull that through. You should have one thread on the left and one on the right. You can cut off the excess thread, and we're ready now to just tie a knot. I'm only going to tie one knot because it's only a 4 or 5 page notepad. You don't have to do a double knot because it's so little. And this thread, once you tie a knot in this, it won't come undone. Okay, so pull it down, both threads down to the bottom, and just snip them off. Now, hand sewing in is not as hard as you think it is. It's pretty easy to do. And where I've pushed my pokey hole through, the holes have gaped a little bit. So when you crease it down with your bone folder, those holes will relax a little bit and start to close up. So there, just pinch them together with your fingers too, and they'll almost disappear. So have a go at the hand sewing. It's not as hard as you think. And it looks really cool too. Now I'll just show you a few variations and I'll brief you on how I made them. This one here is from normal 12 by 12 paper. So it's white on the back. So I just used white copy paper with a black print. Then I cut out another piece and I glued that on top with some little mini tickets and an address label on top, which I printed out on my computer, and I've just stitched that right through the center. This one here, I've just made that on another video that I've done using my little recycled envelopes, and they're all recycled envelopes using the stamp. That there I used a hand ink stamp and just inked address on there and glued that on top, and that's also just a black and white with a stitch down the center. This one here is the manila folder, and I've just randomly put the alphabet all over the whole piece, and then I cut out another band there like a little belly band, and I've just hand printed letter by letter the word addresses across that and put that there. And you can put that in a little envelope if you wanted to, or you can just put it straight into a pocket in your journal. I've got these pockets available on my website as well. Here's another one. This is exactly the same method, only this time I used a black ink with a blue distress ink around the edge. And I glued on some mini envelopes. I've used the blue print instead of the black, and I've stitched it with a machine stitch down the center. What I've also done is I've done a test to see how the sewing machine would sew through these 4 layers. So I had this left over. So I just ripped off a piece of the address off the top and I stuck that in there. These are usable envelopes, so that I use them as little pockets. So that's that one. This one here was the book page with a bit of pattern paper underneath. Ripped off another piece of the book page but turned it around the other way so it gave it a contrast, and just a piece of black cardboard. I used a gel pen. It's just white gel pen. I hand wrote on the black cardboard. So you just need to cut a piece of cardboard out, just hand write on it, and then I come along with my distress ink and I just ink over the top. So you just smudge right over the top and see how that will change the colour. You can do that in whatever colour you want. If you've got blue, put the blue on it. If you've got green, and it will take up the colour that you put on your blender. So that's how I got the colour on that one and that one there. This one here, I've popped it in the grid pocket as well. And I used a printable. I printed my own address label and just put a black backing on it. Again, I've used the blue for that, just to give it a bit more of a vintage look. This one here is a book page, like if you had a Bible journal, you could use this, and I just ripped that out and covered over, because on the other side the writing's always different. So I've made this one the black print and machine stitch down the middle. That address is just a word that I found in a book in the blue, and I just cut it out and glued that on some layers. So it just looked nice on that too. This was a 12 by 12 sheet, and I layered up the addresses, machine stitched as well, with the parchment paper printed in black. This is the 𝗱𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, and I've printed that in black on parchment. And I've used the Dymo label printer to put the word addresses on the front of that one. I've always got to make something with Edith Holden pages. They always look superb. This one here is the manila folder again, and I've just used a piece of note paper, and it's just out of a writing pad, just normal note paper, stamped just a note on it, put it on an angle, ripped it up and distress inked the edges, put one of my little clusters using the recycled stamp off the envelope again, and distress the edges. And this time, instead of printing out the address sheets, I just stamped notes using individual letters there, and just use the same note paper. And this one I've used the stapler. If you haven't got a sewing machine, just use a stapler. This one I used the random stamping all over the napkins or the serviettes, and then I used the gel medium to glue that down over the manila folder. So that one was a really easy one, and just use the notes again, stamping on the inside, and the staples again. So that one is a note. This one is the, I still cannot remember the name of these cards, but you guys all know them. You'll be saying what they are. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't hear you. This one I've rounded the corners of the pages to match the shape of the card. I had to match the shape of the card myself because I made it shorter. So I've left them blank so you can use your imagination. And these two, I've put yellow paper in that one, and I've put pink paper in that one. And I've left those blanks too, so you can use your imagination and get your own ideas on how you would use these. So there are lots of ideas on how you could make up these little address booklets. I think they're absolutely beautiful. Like I said, you can use them, put them in these little grid pockets, or you can slip them straight into a pocket in your journal. I'm Donna, thanks for watching, and bye for now.